So, let's talk about process sampling real fast, and you guys help me out here. But, process sampling, let's talk about why first. You know, we might take samples from several things, right? Let's think about a car, right? That's a terrible looking car. But, we have that car crash, right? We call this in the industry destructive testing, right? And, you know, we also talk about population testing, right? And so, if you're thinking about, we talk about the census each year. Census each year, right? A population, you know, that's incredibly too big to identify on its own. So we use, a sample of the data, right? And so, you'll notice it can also be considered X bar, right? That's your sample size. It could also be represented by a lowercase n, right? And that's your sample. Now, there's two types of probability sampling, okay? Well, I guess let me say two types of data sampling, okay? We have probability sampling, and then we also have non-probability sampling. And so, to kind of differentiate the two, you know, probability sampling, this is where we talk about, let's start here. When we talk about probability sampling, all right? And in probability sampling, every element or, data set in the sample population has an equal chance of being selected. If you think about a jar here, right? Right? You have all these different color marbles in here. Let's say there's an even number of data in there. Basically every color has the same, we'll say, probability of being selected, right? Is that 1/6? And so that probability sampling, there's different types of probability sampling. Okay, and I want to go into that with you guys. We have something called a simple random sampling. You have stratified sampling. You also have systematic sampling. And then you have what we call cluster sampling. Right? And so when we talk about, let's just say, for example, simple random sampling, okay? Let's say I have several different things. I have an apple, tomato, let's say a banana, right? And so I'll just use dots to represent it going forward. And so what it's saying here in sample random sampling is, the numbers can be randomly sampled, randomly selected, just like getting it out of a jar. So the next thing that I want to talk about with you guys is something called stratified sampling. In stratified sampling, the population's broken down into non-overlapping groups, right? So if I have a tomato here, let's say a banana here, and let's say a green apple here, right? This is basically saying that I've randomly selected out of the categories, right? So in this, how many data points do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1 out of 8. One out of 8. And let's say 1 out of 8, right? Because I have, 8 numbers in there, and there was one that was selected out of each group. And so that would be 3 out of 8, right? And then, whatever percentage that is, right? The next one that I want to talk about is called systematic sampling, right? Sampling. And so this is saying that like you're selecting every sorry about that. This means that you're selecting every, let's say, nth. Like for example, if I have, red carrots here, or red apples, excuse me, or red tomatoes, as we were saying in the analogy. This is saying I'm going to grab them out of every second one. Right? And then out of that, that would be your data that you selected out of there. The next thing I want to talk about is something we call cluster sampling. Well, I guess it's here. Cluster sampling. This is where you're coming in and you're saying, okay, I have these different fruits and vegetables and let's give that a banana, right? This is saying I'm going to grab out of this the cluster of them, right? Each chance has 1/3 chance of being selected, right? Based out of the individual, as we said, clusters. So the next thing that I want to talk about is non-probability sampling, right? And this can actually go more, I guess, they say qualitative, right? And so in this, right, let's say we have, let's say we have, for example, we have, fruit. Let's say, let's do it this way. Let's say you have a watermelon. Let's say tomato. Banana. Let's say an onion. Okra. Or we'll call this broccoli. There we go, broccoli. Let's see. Um, a grape. I'll do a different color. Let's say grape here, right? We'll do a carrot. Let's do... Now that I'm back. I have watermelon, tomato, banana, eggplant, broccoli, grapes, a carrot, corn, and a potato. I put a Mr. Potato Head in there. You like my drawing? Thank you. So, you have something that's called purpose. Mm, you have something that's called purpose sampling, right? This is going into a research or a judgment with an intent, right? And I'm basically coming in here with an intent saying, okay, I only want to select what is considered a vegetable. That means that the fruits aren't being selected. So what I'll come in here and I'll get rid of the fruit in here, right? Get rid of the fruit. Right? And that goes and leaves us with our sample of our vegetables. Right? The next thing I want to talk about is something called, let's say, convenience sampling. So convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is one of the earliest sampling methods. You know, the sampling, the selection is based on availability as well as the selection of the convenient sample for the researcher. You know, this is kind of promotes a little bit of biasness in here, but let me draw that back up. Right, so there's our watermelon again. What was that, a banana? Yeah, banana. Right. This is basically saying, okay, I'm only going to grab, what's the easiest amount, whatever's coming closest to me. Right. So that would be of convenience, right? Like I see you in the office. Um, hey, I need help with this. Hey, I need you to come help me out with this. Here's a process sample. I grabbed you at random because you were convenient. The next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is something called snowball sampling. This is where the population's unknown and it's difficult to get a sample. So we would take existing elements of the process, right? So we have different colors. This is basically where we call it a snowball effect, right? And I'll use orange, but basically, ooh, I've got little arrows here. No. This is basically saying where you're looking at this data, right? No, I'll use this color. And it's kind of having a snowball effect.